Quick question. Knowing what we do now about Shanks, does it really make sense that he'd lose his arm to a mere sea beast? Or was Oda tripping? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, on to the video. In Plath Manor, our team, still visibly worried, found themselves in the company of the new head of the Plaths, Silderera. Her name is too long. Let's just call her Plath Mommy. Plath Mommy acknowledged her family's past involvement with necromancy, admitting the punishment they had received was justified, even though the culprit was her own father. Given the circumstances, she demanded that the Ranfelts face their rightful punishment as well. Alias, the eccentric priest, eagerly agreed, shifting the blame entirely onto the Trist parish, exonerating the Plaths. The guys got skin as thick as Karnak's. Taking advantage of the situation, Alias requested Plath Mommy's help in infiltrating the Ranfelt mansion. The Ranfelts had recently doubled their security, making entry nearly impossible. Ever direct, Alias proposed a frontal assault, reasoning that the Ranfelts lacked significant military forces in the mansion, making the operation achievable. Still uneasy about the wild card that the necromancers represented, Plath Mommy questioned whether it was truly feasible. Alias assured her that his team, Karnak and the boys, had ample experience battling necromancers. Late that night, the Ranfelt mansion loomed like a fortress, with guards patrolling every corner, leaving no blind spots. Outside its walls, soldiers of the Plath Syndicate, dressed in black assassin gear, prepared to strike. They lit makeshift Molotov cocktails, launching a full-scale attack, eager for revenge. Cursing the cowardly Ranfelts, they unleashed a barrage of explosive bombs. Caught off guard, the Ranfelts scrambled to defend themselves. Our team took advantage of the chaos, stealthily infiltrating the mansion's grounds. "Hurry up," Alias urged. He could sense the stench of necromancy from within the mansion. However, their stealthy approach was soon interrupted by a group of senior knights charging at them. Taking the initiative, the blue-haired mage unleashed a devastating fireball, obliterating the knights in a fiery explosion. He followed up with chain lightning, sending bolts of electricity arcing across the battlefield, frying the remaining knights as their screams echoed through the night. Redhead Mommy leaped into the sky, her sword glowing with a crimson aura as she used the moon as a backdrop. With a single aura slash, she cut the knights in two. She landed heavily, her aura alone knocking back several knights. With relentless force, she charged at them again, leaving a trail of carnage behind her. The twisted smile on her face, amidst the bloodshed, showed her unquenchable thirst for battle. Baros, our demon commander, watched her rampage with a critical eye. "Her technique is all wrong," he muttered. "She's making way too many mistakes." Before he could say more, the senior knights charged again, screaming for blood. Unfazed, our boys decided it was time to warm up. With a casual swing of his sword, Baros unleashed a powerful wave of energy, sending knights flying. Karnak, not to be outdone, fired a barrage of magical arrows, striking the knights with precision. Alias, like a feisty chihuahua, swung his sword with surprising skill, cutting down knights left and right. Baros and Karnak exchanged puzzled looks. When did the priest learn how to wield a sword? Realizing they were losing the fight, the remaining knights retreated. Redhead Mommy, suspicious, asked why the necromancers hadn't joined the fray. Alias guessed they were lying in wait inside the mansion, preparing for an ambush where they had the terrain advantage. Unfazed by the obvious trap, the team boldly entered the mansion. As expected, the necromancers revealed themselves, laughing at the team's recklessness. They boasted of their power and mentioned the presence of a high-ranking specter they had summoned. But instead of fear, our Chads were overjoyed. They now had all the evidence they needed to complete their mission. Karnak and Baros were already calculating the cash flow these third-rate extras would bring them. The necromancers, irritated by their nonchalance, ordered the specter to attack. The specter charged forward, its massive scythe raised to reap their lives. Alias quickly invoked a spell, calling upon the goddess to purify the specter. Debilitated, the specter staggered back. Seizing the moment, Redhead Mommy lunged forward, her sword glowing with crimson energy as she sliced the specter in half. Using the momentum, she closed the gap between herself and the necromancers, swiftly launching another attack. In a grotesque display, the necromancers' heads exploded, splattering brain matter everywhere. Alias, puzzled, asked why she had killed the necromancers. They needed them alive. Redhead Mommy, equally shocked, insisted it wasn't her doing. Suddenly the mansion seemed to come alive, absorbing the spilled blood and undergoing a horrific transformation. The walls were soon covered with disgusting, vein-like vessels, dripping blood as they expanded and formed a grotesque domain, trapping the team inside. An ominous laugh filled the space, rejoicing in the success of its trap. Sensing the presence of an aura user, a sixth circle mage, and even a high-ranking priest like Alias, the voice grew even more ecstatic. Alias recognized the voice, and turned to see a figure stepping out of the shadows. It was none other than the Rat Bishop, Straff. Though Alias had suspected this, he was still disappointed that a bishop of the church had fallen to the corruption of darkness. The situation grew even more dire as the blue-haired mage and redhead mommy discovered that the exits had been sealed. "The bloody domain is blocking our powers," Alias muttered, his attempts to tear down the barrier proving futile. Karnak, observing closely, noticed that the divine power Alias had released was actually reinforcing the domain, not breaking it. Straff sneered and mocked Alias, bragging about the majesty of necromancy. He claimed the necromancers they had faced so far were nothing compared to his mastery. "If necromancy is as weak as you believe, why are the 7 churches so afraid of it?" Straff's words rattled Alias, visibly unnerving the already shaken priest. Realizing how dire their situation had become, Karnak turned to Baros and warned, "Prepare yourselves. If we're not careful, we might not make it out of here alive." Karnak, using a magic message, explained to Baros that the grotesque fleshy domain was created by combining necromancy and divinity. It was a unique spell, one he had never seen before. He couldn't do much about it except try his chaos magic. Baros, watching the gross tentacles wiggle toward him, asked, shocked, how a backwater priest like Straff could come up with a spell that even Karnak, the god of the dead, couldn't. "Honestly, I'm just grateful this isn't that type of manga. Otherwise, those tentacles would violate our boys, if you know, you know." Their short dialogue was interrupted by a grating voice, reminding them of their precarious situation. Accompanying the voice was the loud thumping of heavy footsteps. Something big was coming. Alias, still tripping hard, noticed the new addition to the party, and it didn't bode well. The new guests were giant crimson flesh golems called chaotic golems, Necromancer's puppets. Acting on their master's orders, the chaotic golems charged at the group. Leveraging their momentum, they threw a devastating punch at our boys. Alias, invoking the goddess Mommy's blessing, erected a barrier, barely blocking the punch. His brief moment of triumph was cut short by cracking sounds. The barrier wasn't going to hold. Asking Alias to buy him a little more time, the Bluehead began his spell chant, conjuring a massive fireball intending to burn the flesh golems to smithereens. However, the golems weren't going to sit back and wait. With a final push, one broke through the barrier, delivering a devastating blow to Alias and the Bluehead, rendering them unconscious. Successfully capturing 2 of the 3 high-priority targets, the golems reported to their master. Straff instructed them to lock the captives in the basement. Redhead Mommy, hoping to rescue the captives, launched a deadly attack on the golems. Her confidence shattered when she noticed the blow did no damage. Panic visibly showed on her face. In a swift motion, the golem caught her, trapping her in its hand. Deeming their mission complete and the rest of the team worthless, the golems turned to leave. "Our boys are really getting hated today. Everyone thinks they're NPCs in their own manhwa." In a single strike, Baros chopped off the golem's arm, freeing the mommy, showing everyone that they're definitely not NPCs. Adjusting his stance, our boy delivered a stab to the golem's chest, destroying its core and the golem with it. Watching the fearsome golem be taken down so easily, the red mommy couldn't help but be shocked. She asked Baros how he had managed to destroy the golem without using aura. Baros noted that it was a difference in experience. He knew the golem's weakness, the area in their bodies devoid of magic. A single blow to that area was enough to end it, though the difficulty lay in locating it, as it kept shifting. Urging the red mommy to take care of herself, he continued his assault. His stamina wasn't endless, and once tired, he'd be vulnerable too. The red mommy asked when Karnak planned to join the fight. Unbeknownst to her, our boy was already in the fray, secretly using necromancy to launch attacks at the golems, knocking them back. His attempts to discreetly seize the flesh domain for himself failed pathetically. He had to figure out a different solution. Launching a massive mana slash, Karnak took down multiple golems simultaneously. Using the few seconds of respite, he pondered how there could be spells in necromancy that he wasn't aware of. It seemed highly unlikely. Something else was going on, and he had just the method to test his theory. Straff, watching his golems get easily decimated by Karnak and Baros, raged. He regretted underestimating our CHADS, contemplating whether to absorb the necromancy scrolls sealed by the Hatoba order. He needed an edge to win. Our CHADS and Mommy, still wreaking havoc in the flesh domain, were stunned by the loud, shrieking voice of a banshee that joined the fight. Karnak acted fast, erecting a magic barrier for defense. He signaled to the Red Mommy to enter the barrier. Startled, the Red Mommy, slower than the boys thought, noticed the banshee already upon her. She tried to run away, but pathetically failed. She launched a counterattack to buy herself some time, but it was futile. The attack phased through the banshee, doing no damage. With a devastating claw slash, the banshee landed a hit on the Red Mommy's hand, dealing corrosive damage. Finally incapacitated, the Red Mommy was also captured. Radiating a majestic aura, Karnak rejoined the fight. He taunted the Necromancer, calling him a noob. His taunts weren't baseless, though, as the flesh barrier around them began collapsing. Panicked and watching his banshee disappear, Straff wondered what the hell was going on. Karnak, showcasing his true majesty, smugly replied that he had simply unleashed his domain on top of Straff's, reiterating that Straff was just an NPC. Enraged, Straff summoned more undead knights to join the fight. Baros, puzzled, asked why he could still summon the undead even with the barrier destroyed. Karnak replied that he couldn't do much against such basic-level necromancy and urged Baros to get ready for the fight. Baros, skeptical, noted that the undead were high rank. It didn't seem like basic necromancy. Realizing they had underestimated Straff, they planned to create an opening and make a run for it. Launching a massive dark blade, Karnak unleashed a wide AoE attack, knocking back the undead soldiers. Acknowledging their skills, Straff tapped into the power of the abyss, summoning a demon of hell. Radiating an aura of evil and carnage, the demon made its entrance. Why do these necromancers always summon ugly demons? Where are the hot mommies? The Hellspawn, acknowledging Straff as his contractor, asked for his wishes. Ecstatic, Straff commanded the demon to destroy Karnak and Baros. Puzzled, the demon wondered what the fool was talking about. Our boys had apparently checked out, leaving behind only illusions. Taunting Straff for being a noob, the illusions dispersed. Fuming, Straff cursed the duo. Outside the manor, our boys, as chill as ever, were enjoying the night breeze. Karnak, still teasing Straff for being an amateur, said he should have focused on more spells instead of relying on a single one. Expecting the Ranfelts to search Plath's manor first, our CHADS knew they couldn't seek refuge there. Their nonchalant chat was interrupted by the Red Mommy, who, heavily panting and still injured, called them lying. Scamming necromancer bastards, who were only after her cheeks. Karnak, still donning his merchant smile, explained that they were currently outside the city to treat her wounds, and had no intentions of clapping her cheeks. They were trying to be decent people, but erasing some of her memories was inevitable. Having lost feeling in her arms, the Red Mommy knew she couldn't live normally, let alone hold a sword. Overwhelmed by sorrow, she asked Karnak to end her life. Damn, I never thought I'd see Red Mommy make that kind of face. Our boy needs to heal her and make her a waifu. Watching the broken and devastated Red Mommy, Baros couldn't help but pity her. Turning to Karnak, he asked if our Chad could use a healing spell to treat her. Karnak reminded Baros that necromancers were essentially agents of death. Healing would go against the natural order of life. Unrelenting, Baros asked if there was anything he could do using necromancy. Karnak replied that although unlikely, there was indeed a possibility of success. The Red Mommy, grasping at straws, asked if she could really be cured. Karnak replied that it was possible, but it came at a price. She had to become his servant. Leaning close to the Red Mommy, with a serious expression matching the situation, he asked if she was willing to become the servant of an evil necromancer. Red Mommy, visibly spooked, debated the issue. We learned that a necromancer can control a person's soul, essentially turning them into slaves. Numerous adventurers had fallen prey to such fates, eventually dying horribly. Terrified by the mere thought, Red Mommy knew she couldn't accept it. Baros, laughing at Karnak's cunning, asked if he had mentioned the servant contract on purpose. Karnak admitted to taking advantage of the situation, hoping he wasn't asking for too much. Karnak, unlocking his charm, told our mommy he wouldn't force the issue. It was her choice to make. Taken aback by our boy's charisma, the Red Mommy asked what would happen if she accepted his offer. Karnak informed her that signing a contract would give him access to her soul structure, allowing him to restore her arm. She would still maintain her free will as a servant, but certain restrictions would be inevitable. Betrayal meant death. Red Mommy, thinking it over, realized that although dangerous, it wasn't much different from a knight's vow of loyalty. It was a choice between losing her freedom or her future as a swordsman. Making a difficult decision, the Red Mommy decided to take Karnak as her master. Karnak asked if she was sure of her decision. With a firm tone, Sarathi, the Red Mommy, answered yes. Calling upon his majesty and power as the Lord of Darkness, Karnak formally invited Sarathi Allen to become his servant. The Red Mommy agreed. With the power of the contract granting him access to Sarathi's soul, Karnak's power flowed into her, gradually healing her arms. Though she felt discomfort, the Red Mommy persevered, knowing she would regain what she had lost. Finishing the treatment, Karnak invited the Red Mommy to his service. Gazing at her fully healed arms, the Red Mommy beamed, acknowledging our boy as her master. Finally, our boy got a whiffu. I was almost giving up. Congratulating the Red Mommy on her choice, Baros pointed out the main issue at hand. How were they going to rescue the captured Alias and Bluehead? Karnak admitted that Straf's necromancy was stronger than expected. He couldn't defeat him using just chaos magic. He would have to resort to large-scale necromancy. Baros, worried, asked if that wouldn't destroy the whole city. Karnak replied it was their only card to play. They could either save their friends while destroying the city, or abandon them to preserve it. Red Mommy, puzzled by their reluctance, asked if it was really such a hard choice. Saving your friends, no matter the outcome, was definitely the right thing to do. Completely missing the point, Baros bravely declared that as long as the intentions were noble, even committing vile deeds was justified. I'm not sure that's how it works, buddy. Convinced by their new twisted logic, our Chads enthusiastically charged to rescue their friends. Back in the city, the soldiers of the Ranfelts were conducting a thorough sweep, driving the inhabitants from their homes and demanding to know the whereabouts of the escaped trio. Vexed by the sudden late-night orders, one NPC from the Ranfelts calmed his frustration with a bottle of beer. A second NPC confronted him, asking why he was slacking off. Enraged by the nagging, the first NPC asked if he was trying to start a fight. The second NPC's sword moved on its own, attacking the first. Believing it was a deliberate strike, the first extra retaliated, landing a vicious blow on the second. This scene wasn't unique. Ranfelt soldiers were falling for the illusion that their teammates were monsters, slaying them in confusion. Karnak, obviously the mastermind behind the chaos, marveled at how corrupt the city was. With just a single tip, the whole place had come crashing down. Red Mommy, puzzled, asked why he was causing so much chaos. Karnak replied that he was creating an undead army to fight against Straf. Although the city had plenty of dead energy to control the summons, he lacked actual undead to command. That being the case, he just needed to create more. Still using their twisted logic of good deeds justifying evil, our Chads relished the carnage they had created. Red Mommy, however, was regretting ever bringing it up. Despite the rumors of necromancers being evil, she noted Karnak wasn't all bad. He was only targeting the Ranfelts and deliberately leaving the townspeople alone. Her peaceful musings sharply contrasted the city, bathed in blood. Whether under Karnak's magic or their own vendetta, the Ranfelts violently fought and killed one another. Satisfied with the carnage, Karnak unleashed his spell, summoning his undead army to awaken. Responding to their king's command, the undead soldiers rose, forming a death army that charged straight for Straf and his legion. Watching the army of death and their king, Red Mommy wondered if it would really be okay serving someone like him. Back at the Ranfelt mansion, Karnak's army of the dead faced off against Straf's legion. Like many times before, our boy had yet again underestimated Straf's power, leading to a desperate battle between the two forces. Straf had managed to summon a death dragon and trumpeters, greatly shocking Karnak. He believed he should be the only one capable of performing that spell, wondering if the past changing had led to some of his items being obtained by others. Urging the mommy and Baros to hurry, Karnak said they needed to attack before they were found out. Puzzled, the red mommy asked what he was talking about. Karnak explained that most of the army was an illusion. He didn't have enough time to make the seemingly massive numbers, so he opted for illusions instead. The red mommy, visibly delighted, rushed forward with a spring in her step. Inwardly, she remarked how Karnak wasn't that bad after all. In the underground basement, Straff stood in a magic circle, linked to the grotesque flesh barrier through repulsive tentacles. The two captives, still unconscious, lay bound on a sacrificial altar. Noting that the zombies were just weak pests despite their numbers, Straff linked his senses to his puppets in the mansion, diligently searching for the trio. To his shock, however, Karnak's voice sounded from right behind him, marveling at how such a huge space was hidden deep in the Ranfelt estate. Abruptly turning to face the voice, Straff saw our Chads and Mommy standing there coolly, ready to give him a thorough thrashing. The chapter begins with our Death King throwing jabs at the Rat Bishop Straff, mocking him for looking exhausted from the drawn-out battle. Redhead Mommy, standing nearby, noticed Bluehead and Alias, bound and still unconscious on the sacrificial altar. Straff had intended to sacrifice them to the demon, but thanks to our team's cunning sabotage, he hadn't gotten the chance yet. Straff boasted that although he was tired, he still had enough strength to get rid of our boys. Channeling his dark magic, he summoned countless undead zombies, poised to attack. With his usual menacing glare, he promised to make them pay and commanded the undead to strike. Our Chads, standing in formation, braced themselves for the clash. Baros, the Tsundere, and Sarathi Mami unsheathed their swords and, like two wolves in a pack of sheep, charged forward to cut down the zombies, delivering staggering attacks. Karnak, our boy, offering support, chanted a spell, calling upon the enslaved souls of the underworld to aid in battle. Countless wraiths responded to the king's summon, crawling from purgatory to join the fight. As Redhead Mami and the Tsundere slashed through the zombies, the wraiths under Karnak's command swept through the battlefield, their cursed claws tearing the undead apart. Their purple, ominous aura gleamed as they slashed the zombies in half with each strike. Not to be outdone, Sarathi and Baros swung their swords in perfect harmony, delivering devastating slashes that swiftly dispatched the undead. The Rat Bishop panicked as his summons were so quickly destroyed. Desperate and cornered, he decided to use his trump card once again, summoning a demon from purgatory, just like all the other creatures in this manhwa. It turned out to be an ugly, yet devastatingly powerful monster. Sorry, folks. The beautiful succubus you were hoping for isn't happening. No fapping for you this time. Sarathi, seeing the hellspawn for the first time, trembled at its sight. Baros, however, having gotten used to it by now, just mocked the demon, asking if it wasn't tired from being summoned all the time. Our Chad Karnak, joining Baros in the taunt, told Straff it was getting old, summoning the same demon over and over again. Despite the mockery, Karnak was secretly making his move. Stealthily, he unleashed his dark magic at the demon, trying to interrupt the summoning. The demon, catching on to Karnak's scheme, bellowed in rage, demanding to know what he was doing. Karnak, in his smug tone, casually replied that it was a counter-summon. If the demon was tired of the mortal world, it could head back to purgatory. The hellspawn, refusing to be mocked, channeled its strength and tore through the counter-summoning spell. Amidst a crimson explosion, the demon freed itself. Standing menacingly before Straff, it asked what the contractor desired. Delighted by the turn of events, Straff commanded the demon to eliminate the Chads and capture Sarathi Mami. Obeying the order, the demon unleashed his mana, suppressing the trio. Sarathi, overwhelmed by the mighty aura, froze in fear. Karnak, still as calm as ever, focused more on why his countersummon had failed. Shushing them away, our Chad instructed Baros and Redhead Mami to fight, as there was nothing else they could do now that the counter-summon had failed. Redhead Mami and the Tsundere, having no other choice, charged at the demon. Their momentum, however, was quickly halted by a casual swing from the demon. With just one attack, both knights were pushed back. Laughing at them for being mere insects, the demon raised its sword high and delivered a devastating vertical slash, resulting in a fiery explosion. Baros and Redhead Mami, caught in the blast, winced in pain. With the knights temporarily retreating, Karnak switched tactics, opting for a magic attack. Conjuring a massive fireball, he sent it flying toward the demon. Unbothered by the attack, the demon erected a magical barrier, successfully blocking it. The trio, watching the futile strike, couldn't help but feel vexed. Redhead Mommy commented that if the demon had its aura, it would likely be of purple rank in night ranking. Baros, equally frustrated, lamented not having awakened his aura, as it would have allowed him to fight back. Picking up on Baros's comment, Karnak seemed to remember something. Quickly turning to Baros, he suggested trying out Plan P. Baros, drawing the same conclusion, perked up. Redhead Mommy, however, was just puzzled. What were the two idiots scheming now? Placing his hand atop Baros's head, Karnak commanded his kin to accept the order. As magic flowed through his body, a strange connection formed between Baros and Sarathi. We learn that Plan P stands for Plan Possession, allowing Baros to temporarily possess someone else's body. Baros, now inside Sarathi, confidently charged at the demon. The demon, finding their struggle absurd, asked how a non-aura user could wield someone else's aura. Baros, as if to prove him wrong, unleashed a brimming crimson aura, bathing the sword in its glow. Capitalizing on the demon's shock, he delivered a ghastly slash across its stomach, drawing blood. Gloating for a moment, Baros taunted the demon, stating that using someone else's aura was his specialty. The demon, wincing in pain from the attack, noticed that Baros had perfectly targeted its weak spot. The fight was going to be harder than it thought. To Redhead Mommy's shock, Baros leveled up her aura, promoting her to the Blue Knight stage. Gazing at the sword glowing with a blue sheen, Baros praised Sarathi, telling her that her latent potential was incredible. And thanks to her, he could now fight more comfortably. With renewed vigor, Baros charged at the demon again, delivering devastating aura slashes across its body. Enjoying cornering his foe, Baros grinned. The demon, still confused by the sudden shift, couldn't believe it was losing. It swung at Baros, but the demon commander, in a move reminiscent of Levi, ran along its arm, aiming for its neck. Sensing the danger, the demon shook Baros off. Sticking the landing perfectly, Baros mockingly asked if that was all it had. The demon, panting from its injuries, called Baros a monster and scanned the room for a way to counter. Noticing Baros's vulnerable state, it decisively launched a mana attack at him, hoping to strike while he was exposed. A purple explosion erupted, seemingly vaporizing both Karnak and Baros. Excited by his cunning victory, the demon laughed haughtily, mocking the humans for their carelessness. His celebration was cut short, however, when multiple clones of Karnak appeared around the room. Our boy, mocking both the demon and Straff, informed them they had fallen for the same trick. He explained that, knowing what was coming, he'd made sure to cover his bases. The demon, still confused and searching for the real target, failed to notice Baros sneaking up behind him. Before it could react, Baros unleashed a barrage of slashes, making the demon scream in agony. It had overextended itself trying to escape the counter-summoning, and now its reserves were dangerously low. Nursing its lethal injuries, the demon cursed, enraged that a mere human had wounded it so severely. Opening a teleportation gate to escape, the demon threatened them, promising devastating vengeance upon its return. Karnak, furious, shouted at the fleeing demon, demanding if it thought it could leave after everything it had done. Stretching out his hand, Karnak shot a blast of darkness at the fleeing demon. The ominous purple energy wrapped around the demon, yanking it back from the portal it had started sinking into. As the demon was still in shock at the absurdity of the situation, Karnak activated his mana absorption technique, greedily draining the demon's mana. The demon's face contorted in agony as its life force was ripped away, and it could only scream in fear and anguish until it was entirely drained, leaving no trace of its existence behind. With the battle finished, Karnak deactivated his illusion technique, causing the numerous clones of himself to slowly vanish. Sarathi, now free from the possession, cried out in pain. The technique had taken a massive toll on her body, and it felt like she might collapse at any moment. As usual, our demon commander was nonchalant, giving her a thumbs up and thanking her for letting him use her body. He told her that once she released her aura, the pain would gradually fade. Pleased with their victory, Karnak remarked that there was only one enemy left to deal with. The group collectively turned to face the Rat Bishop. Straff. Though Red Mommy looked like she had been run over by a train, she was in rough shape. Sighing and accepting the perilous situation, Straff immediately surrendered. Abandoning any thoughts of resistance, he promised to share all the information he knew, asking the group what they wanted to know first. Karnak, however, cut him off, saying there had been a misunderstanding. It would be simpler to just end him and channel his soul to retrieve the answers they needed. No need to complicate things. He then turned to Red Mommy, asking if there was any reason to keep the Rat Bishop alive. Sarathi, clearly under Karnak's influence, quickly replied that there wasn't, and that Karnak could go ahead and end the rat bastard. With her approval, Karnak flicked his finger, sending a beam of dark magic towards Straff. The magic coalesced into a grim reaper's scythe that loomed ominously above him. As the scythe descended, Straff made one last desperate plea for mercy, but the scythe was relentless. With a mighty swing, it cut him down, ending his life amidst a tragic scream. Karnak squatted beside the slain bishop and used his magic to extract the dark energy from Straff's body. Watching the massive pool of energy leave the corpse, Karnak sarcastically remarked on Straff's generosity, saying that one dark magic pool was worth 30 servings, exactly what they needed for their plans. Baros, also pleased, noted that they could finally head home. Our boys, now in high spirits, began making preparations to return to Gestard. Baros even offered to scout out worthy restaurants for them to splurge on during their journey back. Red Mommy, however, pulled the two Chads back to reality, reminding them that they still had unfinished business to handle, nodding toward the unconscious Alias and Bluehead. They couldn't just leave them there. Karnak, sweating, admitted that he had completely forgotten about them. Looks like our boy's good guy arc will take a while to fully settle in. We fast forward to the moment when Alias and Bluehead wake up, shocked at the battle's conclusion. They couldn't believe that the trio had managed to take down Straff on their own. Bluehead remarked that Straff wasn't the kind of enemy just 3 people could defeat. Karnak, quickly improvising, claimed they were just lucky. After the duo was knocked out by the golems, an unexpected army of zombies attacked Straff and the mansion. They figured a rogue necromancer took advantage of the chaos to stage a revolt. Considering Straff's nature, that scenario seemed likely. Karnak added that with Straff having exhausted his necromancy powers, he escaped to the basement, where the trio had been able to finish him off. Alias, buying the story, commented that it must have been thanks to Hatoba Mommy's blessing. Karnak, eager to shift the focus, reminded Alias that he had left the corpse untouched, so he could now proceed with the purification ritual. With his staff glowing in divine light, Alias extracted the remaining dark magic from Straff's body. He remarked that compared to other necromancers, Straff likely had 10 times as much dark energy. Puzzled, Baros asked Karnak if he hadn't drained the bishop completely earlier. Karnak explained that if he had done that, it would have been too obvious. He had intentionally left behind some darkness to cover their tracks. Rallying the group, Alias announced that with Straff's death, the Renfelds had lost their biggest backer, and the city would likely stabilize soon. The rest of the political situation would be handled by the Order, meaning their mission was officially complete, and they could return home. The scene switched to the group outside the basement, where Alias and Bluehead were shouting in surprise at Sarathi's revelation. She had decided to become a knight of the Gestard barony, and would be leaving with Karnak. Alias, always one to speak his mind, asked why. Karnak, annoyed by their overreaction, wondered if it was really that surprising. Red Mommy, once again pulling out her BS no jutsu, spouted some nonsense about Karnak inspiring her loyalty during the fight. Her eyes, however, were deadpan, clearly indicating even she didn't buy her own story. Alias relented, saying it was great if she had found someone to serve. Karnak cut into the conversation, mentioning that the trio had to return to Gestard to officially ordain her as a knight. Bidding farewell to Alias and Bluehead, they thanked them for their cooperation and expressed hopes to meet again. I doubt our boy wants to meet them again, though. At the Gestard estate, the butler and servants warmly welcomed Karnak back, with the butler still sporting his signature beaming smile. Karnak responded to their greetings, saying it was nice to see them again as well. As the butler continued his usual compliments, he was suddenly shocked by the presence of Red Mommy standing at the back of the group. Zeroing in on her gorgeous appearance, He speculated that Karnak might have brought home a new waifu. With flustered faces, the staff inquired about her identity. Karnak, ever dense, calmly replied that she was Sarathi, and that she'd be a knight of the Jestard estate from now on. Sarathi, ever polite, bowed to the group. The butler, disappointed at the dashed hopes of a waifu, reminded Karnak that although the territory was at the border, he couldn't just bring in any random person to be a knight. Baros, anticipating this, encouraged Sarathi to give them a little demonstration. Sarathi unsheathed her sword and unleashed her aura in a majestic display, greatly startling the group. With a single swing of her sword, her aura cut through the ground and struck a tree, splitting it cleanly in half. As the tree fell, our mommy casually sheathed her sword, telling the group she looked forward to working with them. Unbeknownst to her, the entire group was collectively thinking one thing. What was such a precious talent doing in a place like Jestard? We cut to a few weeks later, with Sarathi training with the Jestard Knights. As their swords clashed, it was clear the knight was struggling. The other knights, seeing his obvious struggle, commented on how they all felt the same way. Despite differences in strength and size, none of them could keep up with Red Mommy. An aura user was just that OP. Landing her final blow, Sarathi sent the knight's sword flying, completely disarming him. The knight, acknowledging his loss, requested they end the training there. Sarathi agreed, telling him he did well. As she watched the knights leave, Baros called out to her, thanking her for training them and asking if he could have a turn next. We cut to the duo clashing wildly. Baros, swinging his sword, launched attacks at Sarathi while calling out her weaknesses. He noted that her use of battle aura was unstable. She wasted too much power and needed to be more precise with each strike. Struggling to keep up, Sarathi wondered if it was really that easy to master all those principles. Creating some distance, she asked if Baros could possess her again, so she could feel the techniques firsthand. Baros casually dropped a bombshell, explaining that possession should be limited to once. If done more than 3 times, the soul could be corrupted, and the possessed person might go mad. Rightfully shocked, Sarathi told him to wait a minute. He had done something that dangerous to her? Baros encouraged her to just keep practicing the old-fashioned way, assuring her she had more than enough talent to master the techniques on her own. He told her to get some rest, as he'd need her help to awaken his aura later. Back in Karnak's room, our boy was stressed, trying to figure out how Straff had managed to combine necromancy with divinity. If such a combination were possible, he would have known about it from his past life. The puzzle was driving him crazy. Deciding to set it aside for now, Karnak deemed it more important to block the spread of the darkness of the end for the moment. From his understanding, the darkness flowed through time and space, spreading through this period, so he needed to create a strong enough body to investigate the source. Washing the darkness down several times and carefully manipulating it without making any mistakes, Karnak finally coalesced his mana into a swirling red vortex. The vortex sucked in more dark mana, generating a vertical eye at its center. Holding the mass of dark mana in his palm, Karnak smiled in satisfaction at the completion of his time-space investigative physique, the Eye of Darkness. Within a forest in the Devontor territory, close to the Jestard territory, our 2 Chads and Mommy chill by a campfire. Karnak the Chad mocks Baros, our tsundere, puzzled at how Baros hadn't awakened his aura yet, despite being a literal martial god. Baros, a bit downcast, replied that that was before their regression. He really missed the good old days when Karnak was still a Death King and could give him dark battle aura. It made things way easier. Sarathi Mommy, chilling nearby, was still reeling from the bombshells they'd casually dropped. Even after being briefed on the way to the campsite, she still found it hard to believe that these 2 Chads, no, these idiots, were the ones responsible for all the chaos. She had always sensed they weren't your typical knight and noble, but transcendent beings who had regressed through time. It was almost too much to process. She still found herself wondering how she'd even gotten tangled up with them in the first place. Shaking off her thoughts, Red Mommy questioned Karnak about their mission. They had made the trip to raise the Eye of Darkness, but what did that have to do with being in Devontor territory? Karnak, with a smirk, said it was a precaution. It would be a pain to get caught using necromancy in Jestard. He then added, feigning anger, that it was a small prank considering what the Devontors did to his family. Sarathi Mommy, skeptical, wondered if that was the real reason. If she could see the ghost of the Deventer Lord cursing Karnak, she'd know he was full of shit. Karnak, deciding it was finally time for action, summoned the Eye of Darkness. Sarathi, curious, asked what he planned to do with it. Karnak explained that he was sending it through space-time to see if he could close the door of darkness. With that, he launched the eye into the sky, where it dissolved into space-time without causing even a ripple. Sarathi Mami, finding the sight a bit underwhelming, asked why it was so quiet. Karnak replied that he wasn't opening a space-time gate, just peering into it. He instructed Baros and Sarathi to protect his body while he used the eye to enter the Infinity Realm. Without hesitation, they agreed. Closing his eyes, Karnak transferred his consciousness into the eye as it entered the Infinity Realm. A dark void bathed in a crimson glow. Red embers of aura drifted aimlessly through the infinite expanse. The only thing that stood out in this gloomy void was a withered red tree with cursed branches bearing crimson fruit. The Tree of Emptiness, Astra Schnaf. In his eye form, Karnak stared at the Tree of Emptiness, the true form of the power he had wielded as a Death King. He had to admit, the tree was as ugly as it was ominous. As he continued silently judging it, one of the crimson fruits detached from the tree and fell into the dark waters below. Karnak realized that this was how the darkness of the end spread. He had to stop it to complete his mission. He approached the tree, searching for its core, and quickly spotted a mass of ominous death energy. He figured this was what he was looking for and moved toward it, eager to extract information. But his approach was interrupted by a loud voice demanding he retreat. The voice, powerful enough to cause ripples in the void, ordered him to disappear, declaring that this place was forbidden for mortals. Startled, Karnak asked who the voice belonged to. The voice responded that it was Death, Darkness, and the Destroyer. The sheer power of the voice sent shockwaves through the void, causing violent waves to surge. Karnak, overwhelmed by the onslaught, was tossed around like a leaf in a storm. As the relentless barrage continued, Karnak realized that the power the voice wielded was the darkness of the end. His own power. But how was this voice able to use it so easily? Before he could process what was happening, the voice unleashed even more of its aura and, in the name of Tesranik, banished Karnak from the void. Karnak, engulfed in dark energy, was ejected, his screams echoing in the dark realm. When Karnak regained consciousness, he found Baros and Sarathi Mami hovering over him, calling his name. Nursing a throbbing headache, he asked what had happened. Baros explained that Karnak had suddenly started floating before passing out and asked if everything was okay. Karnak ignored the question, focusing on more urgent matters. Turning to Baros, he asked about the god the cultists believed in. Sarathi, answering for Baros, said it was Tesranik, the god of death and darkness. Karnak, stunned, told Baros that Tesranik was in the Infinity Realm. Baros, shocked, asked if Tesranik was real. Karnak, puzzled, replied that it shouldn't be possible, but he couldn't ignore what had just happened. We switch scenes to a mysterious gathering of 3 people. The 3, trying out a bootleg version of the Akatsuki meetings, discussed the new developments in the void. The first male, the Pope of Death in the Order of the Black God, informed his partners of the problem in the sanctuary, or rather, the void. The second male, with the moniker Dark Lord, asked how that was possible. It was called a sanctuary precisely because nothing could approach it. The only female in the group, with the moniker Priestess of Destruction, found it odd and volunteered to investigate it personally. I believe you all know what this means, Chads. Our boy is finally about to get a waifu. It's been a long time coming. In a different setting, a graceful hand gently rang a bell, summoning her servant to the room. The servant, responding to the call, asked if she was needed, addressing the mistress as Lord Elazar. The mistress, who turns out to be a supreme mega mami, Elazar de Replation, asked her servant to summon Hoodle. She had some business with him. Our boy's new potential mommy wasn't your average mommy. She was the imperial mage of the Linercia Empire and one of the 3 archmages. Our boy really lucked out this time. Back in Jestard, Karnak, still oblivious of the milfy mommy looking for him, addressed his team. He was still dejected about failing to stop the openings. He had even tried approaching the tree several times, but it was to no avail. He informed them that currently all the information he had pointed to the Order believing in Tesranik. However, he still couldn't discern what stance they took in their belief. Baros, puzzled, asked what he meant. Karnak explained that the order was either taking advantage of the power that fell from the tree, or actively disturbing the tree to obtain its power. If it was the latter, then it was a big issue. Red Mommy, confused, asked what he meant. Karnak, unlocking his big brain moment, explained that disturbing the tree meant they had the means to influence powers beyond space and time, hence could grow the realm. A task even his past self took years to accomplish. If that was the case, then they should have powers beyond Karnak in his Death King days, and be able to contain Tesranic in the void. Baros, vexed by the recent developments, asked where Tesranic the bastard came from. Sarathi, the Red Mommy, offered a plausible answer. She suggested that Tesranic was part of Karnak's former power that evolved and developed an ego. Baros quickly dismissed her guess as complete garbage, but Karnak agreed with Sarathi, saying it could be true. Nothing about the whole thing made sense anyway. Baros, skeptical, replied that if the tree named itself, then that would mean Karnak was capable of making gods now. He teased him, telling him to control his kids. Karnak, embarrassed, replied that it wasn't certain, just an educated guess. They still didn't know the truth. Karnak, feeling stressed about the situation, decided to look into the order to uncover some more mystery. The lower members, however, wouldn't help. They would have to target the high officials. Baros interjected, saying it would be difficult to accomplish that with their current methods. Karnak reassured him, having already thought of a solution. They would have to join the King's Order. We learned that the King's Order was a special imperial organization created to hunt members of the Order of the Black. After the Age of Chaos under the Order of the Seven Goddess Mommies, the Inquisitors and Darkness Hunters targeted Necromancers. However, despite this, the appearance of the Order of the Black throughout the continent started causing issues, especially since many members of nobility and royalty had joined the Order. The Seven Goddess Order couldn't manage everything on their own. Thus, the 7 nations got together and created a special division, the King's Order. The members of this order were given special rights to investigate and potentially punish those they suspected to be cultists. Because of this, the selection process was understandably very strict, and joining could only be done through referrals. The boys, realizing the biggest obstacle in their path, were dejected. They didn't have the connections necessary to secure a referral. Sarathi Mommy, coming in clutch, informed them that if they needed a referral, she could plug them immediately. Baros, marveling at the pull our Red Mommy apparently had, was delighted. Karnak, equally intrigued, ordered the duo to pack their bags. They would be leaving immediately. We fast forward to the butler Japel losing his mind. Our boy had apparently pulled another Houdini, disappearing without a word, leaving the Jester estate in the dead of night. In Darath City, our favorite trio, having successfully made their escape, enjoy a cup of tea in a restaurant. Baros, the somewhat reasonable one, asked if it was okay to leave so abruptly. Karnak replied that it was necessary. Japel would have stopped them otherwise. Besides, he wasn't supposed to leave his territory for too long as the Lord. Their discussion was interrupted by a mysterious person joining them, apologizing for being late, as they were the last to arrive. Our boys, donning their supreme glazing smiles, eagerly welcomed the stranger. Their referral had finally arrived. Karnak, donning a bright smile, thanked their referral for coming on such short notice. The referral, who turned out to be Alias, the Mad Chihuahua, assured him it was no problem. He was glad to hear from our Chads. We get a flashback to the previous night when our boys and Sarathi were making a quick escape from the Jester estate. Upon hearing the identity of the referral for the first time, Karnak was surprised. He had assumed that the King's Order and the Order of Goddess Mommy were entirely separate organizations. Red Mommy clarified that they weren't completely independent. A priest was needed to catch a necromancer after all. And since that was the case, it was mandatory to receive a recommendation or be vetted by a priest before joining. Alias, being a first-rank inquisitor, obviously had that authority. Karnak asked how Sarathi knew all of this. She explained that Alias had personally informed her, intending to recommend them to the Order after the Renfelt family incident. Back in the present, Alias, rubbing the back of his head shyly, told our Chads it was a shame when they suddenly decided to return to Jestard. He had been ready to recommend them to the Order. But all's well that ends well. He was happy they came back. Karnak agreed, admitting they had almost missed a good opportunity. Handing over the recommendation letter, Alias instructed them to take it to the Order's headquarters. He cautioned them that while the letter would help, it didn't guarantee their acceptance. Still, knowing our Chads, He was sure they would prevail. Blessing them with Hatoba Mami's grace, he sent them on their way. We switched scenes to Drunta, the capital of the Usteel Kingdom, a beautiful and bustling city with terrible space management. Seriously, what's up with all that wasted space? Anyway, at the King's Order headquarters, our trio blended into the crowd, assessing the various talents in the building. Karnak remarked that their potential was higher than expected. Red Mommy noted she had already spotted 2 aura users. The capital was definitely built different. Their observations were interrupted by an order attendant who informed them that their recommendation letter had been confirmed, and he would guide them to the Order Lord. In a private room, they met the Order Lord. The bastard, introducing himself as Arantel, seemed ordinary, but he was actually a purple knight, a true powerhouse. Gazing at their file, Arantel noted that their identities were secure, and, with a recommendation from Inquisitor Alias, they had earned a trustworthy referral. However, as they likely already knew, that wasn't enough to join the Order. Karnak acknowledged this, saying he was aware of the training period they needed to complete first. Arantel confirmed this, explaining that it was a necessary measure to prevent pagan infiltration into the Order, and he hoped they understood. Wasting no time, he issued the trio their first mission, shocking our Chads. Sarathi Mami, annoyed, pointed out they had just joined. Arantel, laughing heartily, countered that the nature of the Order was non-stop work. With that, he officially welcomed them to the King's Order. Sounds more like a black company to me. Back at the main hall, the trio met their temporary teammates. The leader of the new arrivals introduced himself as Tarman, general of the 4th Battalion. He would serve as their guide during the practical placement. We're also introduced to Kaldelim, a dual-blade swordsman, and Alice, a second-rank inquisitor of Artema, the goddess of the ocean. Going forward, I'll be calling her Ocean Mommy, and as for the swordsman, well, no one cares, so he'll just be plain called. Karnak, feeling uneasy, asked if the Order was always this busy. Tarman explained that their timing was unfortunate. A new mission had just been assigned. Baros, surprised, noted that the general of the Order was actually a mage. Tarman explained that in their line of work, identity played a huge role, especially when dealing with nobles. Though he wasn't direct about it, his meaning was clear. In this world, family power mattered more than ability. Harsh truth. He further explained that the Order's primary job was to collect information, track down pagans, abduct key figures, and interrogate them, not necessarily fighting. Just being good at combat didn't guarantee success in the job. Sarathi, picking up on the sketchy details, asked why the missions all seemed to involve dubious deeds. Tarman, not denying it, admitted she was right. Their job was to do dark things to pagans. That was why mages, who could perform diverse tasks, were favored for leadership roles. Curious, Sarathi asked why clerics weren't qualified, given they had a similar skill set. Ocean Mommy explained that the Order was partly created to keep the 7 goddess orders in check, so a priest couldn't hold a general position. Tarman got down to business, explaining their mission. They had received intelligence that a regional noble, Count Brelant of Usteel, had joined the Order of the Black God. Their task was to disguise themselves as adventurers, infiltrate the county, gather evidence, and possibly punish the Count. Tarman added that this was all the information they had. Karnak, visibly shocked, asked if they really had to proceed with such basic speculation and no concrete proof. Tarman, maintaining a carefree smile, confirmed that was the nature of the Order. It was up to them to gather proof. Yup, this is definitely a black company. Just look at Ocean Mommy's face. She looks exhausted. Our Chads, finally understanding their situation, realized why the Order was always so busy. We cut to Count Brelant's castle, a grand structure looming ominously in the background, occasionally illuminated by flashes of lightning. The whole place screams, something shady is going on here. Inside, the Count anxiously watches over his ailing son. Seizing the opportunity, shady-robed men urge the Count to open his eyes. His son's condition was worsening by the day. The Count, rejecting their offer, said he knew the fate of those who dabbled in necromancy. What was brought back from death was never truly alive, just a moving corpse. The necromancers insisted that their methods had evolved. By serving Tesranik and using his power, the Count need not fear death. It wasn't a fate, but simply the result of illnesses left uncured. How could curing illness be evil? They added that his son was still young, and accepting death wasn't a natural part of life's logic. Desperate and willing to try anything to save his son, especially after the Order of the Goddess offered little help, the Count reluctantly agreed to convert to Tisranic. We switch back to our Chads, now at an inn on the outskirts of Brelant County. Tarman, leading the team, informed them that they would begin gathering information immediately. Although it seemed obvious, he reminded them not to reveal their connection to the king's order. They had to use methods unrelated to pagans. Handing them a wanted poster, he introduced their new aliases as bounty hunters searching for Helon Krat, a notorious criminal from the capital with a talent for disguises. The team split into 3 groups to investigate, their inquiries eventually leading them to the Count's manor. Inside the manor, Tarman apologized to the Count for the sudden visit, introducing himself as an adventurer chasing a wanted criminal. The Count, finding this reasonable, agreed to cooperate, noting that it would be bad for the county if a criminal remained at large. Thanking the Count, Tarman bid him farewell and left. As the two exited the castle, Baros asked if that was all they were going to do. It seemed pointless to come all that way and not take further action. Flashing a beaming smile, Tarman reassured him that although it might not seem like much, he had already gathered enough to move forward. Later that night, the group gathered for an information exchange. Plain Called started, sharing that the Count had lost his wife at a young age, leaving his son as his only family. Karnak added that, according to his investigation, the Count's son was suffering from a terrible, incurable disease that even holy healing spells couldn't cure. Tarman noted that this made it a perfect scenario for cultists to exploit. Called agreed, adding that there had been a suspicious drop in the county's crime rate, with the Cunt himself leading the charge to eradicate criminals. Strangely though, if the criminals were driven out of the county, there should have been a spike in criminal activity in neighboring towns. But everything remained eerily quiet. Turning to Ocean Mommy, he asked if she had heard of any recent tales involving criminals. Finally, someone other than Called got a chance to speak. Dude's been hogging the spotlight a bit too much for someone with plain in his name. Ocean Mommy calmly replied that mass disappearances were a classic sign of necromancer involvement. Tarman chimed in, mentioning that during their visit to the Count's manor, they noticed every window was covered with thick curtains, as if to block out the sun. Called responded that it was a familiar tale. Wait, Called again? How is this plain guy getting so much dialogue time? Why couldn't Ocean Mommy shine a bit more? Anyway, Called noted that this all led to a single conclusion. A vampire was involved. We cut to Cunt Berlant's castle. Though grand and majestic, it had an eerie vibe, especially with the ominous crimson moon looming in the background. Villains in this manhwa are so easy to spot. They're always in gloomy, ominous places, practically screaming to be noticed. Inside the castle, as expected, the Count and his son were enjoying a hearty meal in an eerie-looking room. Count Berlant addressed his son, asking if he despised him. His son, calmly swirling what looked suspiciously like blood in a wineglass, replied that he had no reason to hate him. For the first time, he realized life could be peaceful. Humans already needed to kill to survive. He was just doing his part. Besides, he only drank what the order provided. He'd never harmed an innocent. All that had changed was his diet, which he found far better than death. The Count felt relieved by his son's perspective. Internally, he reassured himself that his son hadn't changed. He was still as polite and vigilant as ever. In a twist of self-delusion, he concluded that the Black Order wasn't heretical as everyone claimed. It was simply a new truth for a new age. When Tisranic set foot on these lands, he'd create a haven, balancing life and death, and his son could finally live a normal life. With a solemn expression, he urged his son to hold on a little longer. He wouldn't let him live in that body forever. The next day, our two mommies continued their investigation. Red Mommy, a bit dejected, asked why they had to keep investigating when they already knew who was responsible. Ocean Mommy replied that they needed absolute evidence. Their conversation was interrupted by a stranger who approached them, asking if they were the bounty hunters going around town. Ocean Mommy confirmed and asked, "What's up?" To their surprise, the man informed them that the wanted man they were after had been found, and the information came directly from the Cunt. Back at the inn, the group of fake bounty hunters held another meeting. Tarman, amused, asked if the Count had really given information about a non-existent criminal. Ocean Mommy confirmed this, adding that the Count claimed the target returned to the same location every night, a perfect setup for an ambush. Kald noted that the cunt specifically mentioned night, hinting he was indeed a vampire. Tarman smirked, noting it was an obvious trap. Did they really think they'd fall for such an obvious setup? Karnak, being the voice of reason, told them to consider it carefully. Ignoring the information would make the cultists suspicious, leading them to dig up information on the group. The others agreed with Karnak, who inwardly marveled at how daft they were. "You know you're cooked," when Karnak is the voice of reason. Snapping out of his thoughts, Kald asked Tarman what they should do. If it was a trap, which it was bound to be dangerous and advantageous for the cultists. Troubled, Tarman admitted they had no choice. They'd have to play into the cultists' hands. Later that night, in a rundown shack in the middle of nowhere, definitely a trap, the group waited. Sarathi Mami, observing them, noted how calm they seemed. Feeling restless, she asked Tarman about the strength of vampires. Tarman shrugged, saying they were trash, just a bit stronger than humans, nothing to worry about. Red Mommy countered that ancient vampires were supposed to be very powerful. Kald explained that vampires were usually discovered quickly, making it impossible for them to survive long enough to become truly dangerous. Red Mommy, unconvinced, asked about aura users who turned into vampires. Tarman explained that such vampires couldn't use aura, making them weaker. Seeing the Chad's unusual quietness, he asked if they were worried. Though arrogance was bad, he assured them that a vampire was within their limits. Suddenly, a red ominous light shone through the window, a magic attack aimed directly at the shack. The explosion was massive, yellow flames blossoming as debris fell. A coughing sound echoed through the dust and smoke. Our Chads weren't done yet. Ocean Mommy had come in clutch and shielded the group with a magic barrier. Tarman, startled, asked when their enemies had arrived. He hadn't sensed them at all. The villains ignored him, more interested in the fact that their guess was correct. The group was indeed from the king's order. The leader, a smug bastard with an aura-infused sword, taunted that regular bounty hunters wouldn't have survived that attack. Red Mommy, noticing the bastard's aura blade, was shocked. She thought vampires couldn't use aura. Plain Kald identified the leader as Sir Durald, the strongest knight of Count Brelant, and wondered why an aura user would become a vampire. Unbothered, Tarman declared that he didn't care about the details. Count Brelant had clearly allied with pagans, making them enemies of the goddess Mommy and the king. Commanding the pagans to kneel, he declared it was time for their judgment. The cultist laughed at him. Kneel? To whom? Tarman must have lost his damn mind. When the eerie-looking cultists didn't comply, Tarman officially declared war, ready to enact judgment. The group geared up for battle, with Ocean Mommy enchanting our boy's weapon, giving him the goddess Mommy's blessing. With everything in place, they charged at the cultists, their swords ready to draw blood. The cultists responded in kind, charging forward in the name of Tesranik, their god. One especially eager one lunged forward, his beastly claws poised to deliver a nasty claw attack. Unlucky for him, the intended target, Kald, turned out to be a seasoned swordsman. He easily parried the claw attacks, his dagger moving in an intricate dance of finesse and skill. Creating an opening, he brutally slashed the vampire across the chest, staining the ground with his putrid blood. The wounded vampire cursed at him, calling him a dog of the royals. He boasted that such a wound wouldn't do anything to him, referring to a vampire's famed regeneration. Before he could glaze some more, a solemn chant invoking the goddess's purity rang out. Ocean Mommy, calling upon the goddess Mommy's power, unleashed a ray of purifying light, swiftly disintegrating the toothy foes. The vampires, realizing how dangerous our Mommy was on the battlefield, decided to prioritize taking her out first. With determination, one vampire charged at our Mommy, a war axe in his hand, intending to hack her to pieces. Tarman, finally deciding to be useful, shielded Ocean Mommy. Casting his own spell, he called upon his loyal servant to aid him. A rock golem rose from the ground, swiftly yeeting the charging vampire to the afterlife. Following his summoning spell, Tarman immediately cast Lightning Blast, frying a different vampire in a harrowing display of cruelty and magical skill. Confirming his foe's demise, Tarman took a moment to analyze the battlefield. He was amazed and a little surprised by our Chad's expertise in battle. For a fourth circle mage and his knight, Their skills were unexpectedly impressive. As he watched Baros decimate the vampires, his sword flashing beautifully in its dance of death, and Karnak's equally impressive skills with deadly magic arrows, he couldn't help but wonder how such skilled people had remained unknown until now. However, even with all that, victory still wasn't certain. Despite the Chad's impressive skills and Ocean Mommy's incredible purification magic, victory still hinged on the fight between aura users. They were both Red Knights. But could Red Mommy, who had significantly less experience than Durald, really defeat the seasoned swordsman? Tarman's worries were valid, as over at the grand fight between aura users, the two clashed swords relentlessly. With a mighty blow, they both got knocked back, finally putting some distance between them. The aura released from the clash rampaged, cleaving visible marks on the ground and blowing the leaves from the nearby trees. Red Mommy, suffering the worst of the clash, skidded back for a distance before finally managing to stop her momentum and regain her balance. Calmly walking up to her, Durald mocked the feisty Mommy. She had a pretty face, and her skills weren't bad for her age. However, she still stood no chance against him. And judging by how gassed out our Mommy was, his words held a little bit of weight to them. We briefly cut to the overall view of the battlefield. The chaotic mess, when gazed upon from an aerial view, is shockingly mesmerizing. The intricate display of abilities by our Chads reveals a stunning sight amidst the chaos. The cultists, however, had no room to admire such beauty, as they were currently being bodied by our favorite squad. Whether it was the beautiful purification of Ocean Mommy's spell, or the secretively vile decimation by Karnak's dark energy, the cultists fell all the same. There were shouts among them encouraging each other to hold on and not retreat. They had Tesranic's blessing after all. Even if they died, the god of death would resurrect them. Although the proclamations were grand, they didn't change the fact that they were currently being bitch-slapped all across the battlefield. Karnak, taking a breather from the ass-whooping, lamented the fast regeneration of the vampires, not to mention the enigma of the vampire who still possessed aura. Baros replied, noting that it would be troublesome if Durald joined in their fight. They expressed concern for Red Mommy. Would she really be okay? Over at the fight with Durald, our Mommy was sent flying by an attack from the bastard. Sarathi, taking a moment to analyze the situation, noted that she was superior when it came to aura and experience, but she couldn't get an opening to launch an effective counterattack. Besides, what was all that bullshit about losing your aura when you became a vampire? The bastard clearly still had his aura. What the hell was going on? Oblivious to her inner struggles, Durald gloated a bit, boasting about the power bestowed upon him by Tesranic. With his signature cocky grin, he bragged about being able to harness aura despite being a dark one. Red Mommy, seeking guidance, contacted Karnak. She inquired if he knew the vampire's weakness. He was a Death King, after all. He must have had some in his legion. Our boy, taking a break from absolutely clapping the vampire's cheeks, casually replied that he didn't know any. They were so weak that he didn't bother to find out anything about them. Besides, if he had such info, he wouldn't be struggling so much right now. Red Mommy, bugging, called out to Baros, requesting some help. The task was proving beyond her capabilities. The demon commander replied that those without aura would be complete ass in such a fight. She was on her own. Well, unless she was open to trying Plan P again. Red Mommy vehemently rejected the idea. Something could go horribly wrong this time. Realizing it was all on her, she decided to lock the fuck in and handle it on her own. Channeling a vast amount of aura into her sword, she opted for the simplest solution: overwhelm her opponent with sheer power. Decisively swinging her sword, Sarathi sent a massive aura slash at Durald. The menacing crimson aura caught the bastard vampire off guard, slamming into him and eliciting a slight groan. Before he could gather his wits, Red Mommy was already on the offensive, leaping toward him with murderous intent. Her sword was bathed in a vast crimson aura, the sight striking a delicate balance of beauty and horror. Durald scoffed at her pathetic attempt. Just a little more aura in the sword wouldn't change the inevitable outcome. Red Mommy, unperturbed by his mockery, launched her attack. The mighty blow landed squarely on the ground, sending dust and debris flying everywhere. The cunning bastard Durald easily evaded her attack. Seeing an opening, he counterattacked, sending an aura slash at Red Mommy, knocking her back. The blow proved to be mighty, forcing our gorgeous Mommy to skid for quite a distance before she barely managed to regain her balance. Visibly panicking, she realized she couldn't overwhelm him with sheer power either. She had to think of another solution, and fast. Noticing her inner turmoil, Baros, the demon commander, contacted her, pointing out her mistake. She was still repeating the same blunders she'd made during their earlier sparring. Her aura usage was inconsistent with a lot of wasted energy and movement. He urged her to remember what it felt like when he was inside her. The memory of the possession still lingered. She just had to draw it out. Red Mommy, heeding his advice, concentrated on her aura and locked in. The experience that was still in her body after Baros had been in her. She had to draw it out. She had to unite her mind and purify the energy that flowed to her sword. Taking a moment to relive the possession, the intricate handling of aura by the demon commander, his stellar battle IQ and positioning, she slowly reached enlightenment, and the results immediately showed. Her aura, once chaotic and dim, suddenly became many times brighter, not to mention sharper. Durald, the bastard, also noticed this change and was obviously shocked. However, now wasn't the time to stay still. Moves had to be made. He charged at Red Mommy, taunting her that her attempts would all result in failure. Channeling her inner Baros, Red Mommy mimicked what he'd do in that situation. Locking the fuck in, she unleashed a devastating slash at Durald, sending the bastard flying like a rag doll. Surprised by her own prowess, Red Mommy was stunned for a second, failing to move. Soon, however, she gathered herself and proceeded to launch a barrage of attacks on Durald. The vampire bastard couldn't even muster any resistance and was swiftly reduced to a punching bag by Sarathi. This was how Baros had managed to play around with her. Even though she was an aura user, her target shouldn't have been the opponent's blade or body. Rather, she should have identified his intentions and moved accordingly. Durald, having dodged an attack by Red Mommy, stealthily appeared behind her, hoping to launch a sneak attack. Sarathi, however, never lost track of him. Her crimson eyes had always kept track of him. So when he launched his attack, she swiftly turned and blocked it, foiling his plan. With her enlightenment, she could read Durald's movements like a book, identifying where he'd strike and aiming for that precise point before the momentum could build up. Red Mommy, now in her Baros enlightenment form, easily read and launched a counterattack on Durald, landing a nasty slash across his body, the latter coughing up hella blood from the damage. Our boys observing all of this noted that she was popping off. It seemed there was no need to help her out anymore. Tarman, delighted by the developments, remarked that things were looking really good for them. It was about time they wound things up. Back to Durald. The vampire bastard couldn't believe what was happening. How had Red Mommy changed so much in mere minutes? Bitter and enraged, he deemed himself blessed by the mighty Tesranik. He had to kill her no matter what. Channeling all his aura, he burst out in a brilliant glow. His sheer power cleaved marks into the ground. Deciding to risk it all, he unleashed all his power into a single slash aimed at Sarathi. Kald and Tarman, observing from the sidelines, were shocked by Durald's desperate attempt. Unleashing that much aura would surely come with lethal repercussions. They shouted at Red Mommy, warning her that it was dangerous. She had to dodge that attack. Sarathi Mommy, still locked all the fuck in, decided against dodging. Even if she lost a limb, she could still regenerate it. That being the case, she decided to face the attack head-on. Under the watchful eye of our boys, she unleashed her own attack, sending her reinforced aura to meet her opponents. The two slashes clashed midway, causing a huge shockwave. The ground beneath the clash was torn to bits, cracks spreading out in a ripple. Even the trees weren't spared, as debris flew and mercilessly smashed into them. The rest of the squad, watching the clash from the sidelines, shielded themselves from the ensuing dust cloud, eagerly waiting for the conclusion of the clash. As the dust settled, two silhouettes were observed on the battlefield, still in opposition to each other. However, that quickly changed as Durald's head dropped from his neck, bouncing and rolling on the ground. Before he could curse his rotten luck, Red Mommy swiftly stabbed him in the head, ending his pathetic existence. Our Mommy, although gassed out, had won the fight. We cut to a while later as Ocean Mommy was tending to Red Mommy's wounds. She thanked her for her help, but Ocean Mommy, being modest, said it was her they should thank. Without her, they would have been cooked. Tarman called out to them. They now had clear evidence of the Count's sins. It was time for some action. He instructed Alice to report their findings to headquarters. It was time to serve some sweet justice to Kunt Breland. We cut to the Count's castle, where a massacre was underway. Shouts to not let a single cultist escape rang out throughout the castle. Inside, Ocean Mommy, using her purification light, beamed the hell out of the vampire servants, making quick work of them. As all of this happened, the Count sat silently in his study, seemingly having accepted his fate. With a defeated look, he pleaded with Tesranic to have mercy on his son. With that, he ended his own life. A bit of a distance from the castle, we see 3 people desperately fleeing. It turns out they were the Count's son and his attendants. The little kid, vexed by the happenings, cursed the king's order. In the name of Tesranic, he vowed to have his revenge no matter what.